Hey, what's up guys? So as I said last week, this video was supposed to come out, our top 10 magic users in all of Marvel. Instead, we covered the top 10 most powerful versions of Spider-Man throughout all of Marvel. And thanks to that, we were able to make the time to get this video out this Thursday for you. Now this is likely going to be the longest video that we have done so far. The nature of Marvel magic just means that there's a lot of context to go through and a lot of regulations to put on the list. So here to help me with this week's video is our boy Kev.
Hey guys, Kev here, back for another video.
And like I said, we are going to have a few regulations that we're going to put on the list. Magic user is a pretty broad term. Originally, we were going to use sorcerer, but we felt that covering every magic being in Marvel was a bit more appropriate. And why don't you start us off with the regulations that we have for this list, Kev?
Gotcha. In the Marvel Universe, there are characters like Nightmare, Chthon, Sidorak, Mephisto, and Magic who have universal scale feats, but these are restricted to when they are inside of their own realm. Hell Lords, Fear Lords, and the like mostly interact with those outside of the realm in significant ways, weaker avatars or forms, contextual preparation, or by other means that generally are not standard. Not everyone's powers operate the same way under this dimensional category, but all share the common thread of being an entity limited by location. This just isn't a limit that we could define with enough objectivity to put them on the list.
That's a bit of a theme with magic beings in Marvel. As I said, a lot of context goes into their powers, and their powers can interact with other people in different ways depending on that context. And similar to that is the Vishanti. They're the patrons of the Sorcerer Supreme. Their names are Oshtar, Hogarth, and obviously the most famous one, Agamotto. Now, instead of depending on a realm, they heavily depend on one another for their full power. And this, along with Oshtar and Hogarth's lack of feats, are really what's keeping them off of the list. However, they definitely would be easily top 5 given their full power. Agamotto specifically can battle beings like Galactus and even fought Celestials alongside the 1 million BC Avengers, and the latter feat was before he even reached his prime. So these definitely are top tier magic users in Marvel, and they supply a lot of the list with power, but their actual power depending on, again, their location. And this just isn't something that, like Kev said, we can examine with enough objectivity to put them on the list. There are also characters that likely should be on the list under their own power, but lack the feats or showings to put them in the top 10. Now, there's two that we thought worth mentioning for this list, the first being Merlin. Now, he has showings against people that are on the list, but nothing really definitive enough for us to say for sure, but he is definitely portrayed as a top-tier sorcerer. The second honorable mention in this section would be Zom. This is a character who does scale directly above some of the people that are on this list, and his rampages have gained the attention of beings like Eternity and Living Tribunal. But that's really it in terms of the feats that he's had other than a short appearance in World War Hulk. And that was when he was being summoned through Strange, not necessarily even at full power. And we just didn't think it was appropriate to put a character lacking so much in showings on the list proper. But we did have some people that were definitely considered for the list and have enough feats to be on there, but just don't have enough in terms of either potency or knowledge to put them on there proper. Do you want to start us off with those, Kev?
Yeah, two of those people being Morgan Le Fay and Doctor Doom, both of which who are extremely powerful in their own right. They just do not meet the cusp of the requirements compared to the rest that are actually on the list. Both of which have been rivals to one another. They've traded wins over the years, and Doom has often gone to Le Fay for training. They're probably the top sorcerers on Earth that aren't on the list, in my opinion. Another honorable mention will be Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch is possibly a character that surpasses both in raw and mystical power, but lacks the proper knowledge of the arts to make the list.
And additionally, we also have characters like Loki, Enchantress, and Hela who've had eons to study incantations of all kinds, and they definitely do rank amongst the highest tier sorcerers across all of the 9 realms, let alone just Midgard, but they do lack the raw power in comparison to the people that are on this list, and it is notable that Loki has even attained the title of Sorcerer Supreme in the past, so despite not making the list, all of our honorable mentions definitely are still top tier. And starting off with number 10 on our list, we have Baron Mordo. Now, he's obviously a rival to Doctor Strange, who we'll be seeing later on the list. He's a master of dimensional black magic, and this is to the point that he's able to defeat extra-dimensional beings with dominion over their entire realm, akin to Mephisto. He can even travel outside the bounds of space and time themselves, and is able to time travel on a whim. And it isn't just space-time manipulation and dimensional magic that he also has conjuration, with mindless ones who have S-tier level stats, along with other demons that can fight S-tiers. And these high-tier summons are under his complete control. But one of his best strategies is actually astral projection. Now, this is something that allowed him to manipulate the empathic abilities of a Nexus being like Man-Thing, which is incredibly impressive in the context of Marvel's hierarchy. He's also able to absorb enough magic to outright destroy the Earth casually, so even with the lowest person on our list, we're already at easily planet-busting levels of power. And as I mentioned, he is a rival to Doctor Strange and has fought him in the past. He's even shown superiority in some instances to some versions of Doctor Strange. He was even able to briefly hold back Dormammu, although this was the weaker classic incarnation. And without a doubt, his best feat is magically shielding himself from an explosion caused by the Big Bang itself, which is an event that we'll discuss later in the list. Though it should be noted that this did push Mordo to the point of going completely mad, but it does still show how potent his mystical abilities really are.
And coming up next at number 9, we've got Umar. Umar is equivalent in power to Dormammu's weaker classic form, but has been shown inferior to his modern forms. She can also cut through the earth in microseconds, shrugs off classic Thor and planetary destruction without a scratch, and scales above Worldbreaker Hulk in both strength and stamina. She can also casually restrain him. For more magic-based feats, she has been in earlier versions of classic Strange multiple times, has mastered the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, and is overall the point where we begin delving into sorcerers completely out of the realm of any normal human. In one of the early Defenders runs, that Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, Hulk, and Namor, with the combined efforts of Dormammu, they were able to take out Eternity. Though she does exclaim that she would not have been able to do so without the helps of Dormammu. Dormammu was amped by the Eye of Agamotto, but it's still a relatively ridiculous feat when you look at the grand scheme of things. And after Umar, we have Odin at number 8. Odin is a very prominent magic figure in the Marvel Universe, considering he is the All-Father and is connected to the 9 realms. He's killed Hela in one blast. He has defeated galaxy-sized sentient cosmic storms. He's also defeated other Skyfathers like Surtur and Seth, destroying multiple galaxies as a result of their battles, and afterwards just restoring the damage to the galaxy and it just looking just fine. Even manipulating all of the electromagnetic particles in a given universe, which is kind of ridiculous. He can summon the Destroyer armor at will in some forms, a buff that allows him to battle Celestials and tank their attacks. And we know from previous interactions with Odin that he's considered Celestials as beings who just would completely decimate him and the Asgardians without even a blink. So being able to do so with a buff like the Destroyer armor is pretty high up there. He's defeated Infinity, the other half of his own soul, who can tear through the fabric of space and time. He's also restored damage done to the Milky Way galaxy due to their battle, which spanned across light years. He can remove realms that are on the World Tree, something that requires universal level manipulation.
Yeah, there used to be 10 realms, the 10th realm being heaven, and Odin was able to completely remove it from the World Tree. And we'll discuss the significance of the World Tree as a cosmic construct later on, but this does kind of signify the point where we get to characters that can manipulate on a universal scale. And continuing with that trend with our number 7 is Clea. Now, she's the daughter of Umar, wife of Doctor Strange and the Sorceress Supreme of the Dark Dimension. And being the daughter of Umar obviously means that she has the blood of the Faltines, which is the name of the race that Umar and Dormammu come from. And they are noted to be the strongest mystical race in all of the Marvel Universe naturally. And this is shown when she's able to fight evenly with classic Doctor Strange and even Dormammu himself, 2 sorcerers who are far above her in terms of experience. She's even capable of defeating another member of her race, Nicodemus. And this is when he was amped by the flames of Faltine from across the multiverse. And when he couldn't control this amount of power, it resulted in an explosion which is described as multi-universal. This did all occur within Nicodemus' own mindscape, but not only did Clea reverse this spell, but she used it to restore the power that Nicodemus had drained from Doctor Strange. So along with her ability to fight on par with him, she's also shown to be able to honestly save his ass sometimes. She can also contend with and even summon interdimensional deities, and has even been shown to be able to bind Mephisto easily. And despite the fact that he was outside of his realm, he's still a character that is more powerful than even some of our honorable mentions outside of it. So her neutralizing him with the bands of Cytorak is incredibly impressive. And in terms of lower scale feats, she's been able to hypnotize the Hulk and turn him back into Banner, and block the entirety of the Mindless One race. Now just an army of Mindless Ones was summoned by Doctor Doom to defeat entire Avengers rosters. So the fact that she was able to make a mystic barrier that blocked its entire race really puts into context how powerful Clea is. She's also defeated characters that are in our honorable mentions like Enchantress, and has been shown to manipulate the entirety of the power cosmic within Silver Surfer to make a new, equally powerful humanoid out of his form. And for those of you in the know about Silver Surfer, know that he's one of the most powerful energy manipulators in probably all of comics. And along with Strange, Clea is able to shape and manipulate universes, and she tends to help him accomplish some of his more impressive feats, including blocking hits from a mystically amped Galactus. And this version of Galactus was stated to be able to devour universes. And impressively enough, Doctor Strange even accomplished this feat by himself, though his defenses were eventually overwhelmed and shattered. So this, along with Doctor Strange being the teacher of Clea, does imply that his mystic knowledge and possibly power is far above hers, even despite her designation as a member of the Faltines. And obviously, since we have Doctor Strange above her at number 6, we do agree with this logic. Now, for those of you who have been in the versus battle scene for any amount of time, know that classic Doctor Strange is one of the most powerful versions of any hero in any comic. And his feats do definitely showcase this. He was capable of causing an imbalance in the cosmos that required the intervention of the Living Tribunal, who we already mentioned as only turning his attention to the most powerful beings in all of the universe. And when the Living Tribunal arrived, he recruited the In-Betweener. Now, this is a powerful cosmic entity that represents the concept of middle ground, and he was created by Lord Chaos and Master Order. And it was due to this origin that Doctor Strange was capable of channeling the power of those two deities, Lord Chaos and Master Order, and was able to use their power to neutralize an entity who was stated as one of the most powerful in all of Marvel at the time. I mean, the In-Betweener has fought a starving Galactus to a stalemate, and even defeated Doctor Strange himself several times in the past. And when the In-Betweener failed to neutralize Doctor Strange, obviously the Living Tribunal himself had to step in. He attempted to capture Doctor Strange with mystic bonds, but even despite this, the Sorcerer Supreme was able to break out. Now, this isn't at all to imply that Doctor Strange is even close to the Living Tribunal in terms of power, just that he has mystic prowess on a level that makes him a threat to any opponent no matter how powerful they are. The Living Tribunal in this exchange even states that it shouldn't be possible for a human to be as strong as Steven, and Doctor Strange definitely does have plenty of other contextual victories like this against high-level entities like Galactus himself, who I already mentioned. Now, he did knock out Galactus while he was already fighting some Avengers and was starving, but the potency of this incantation definitely can't be ignored. And also the fact that he does have legitimate victories over high-level universal entities like Nightmare, who we already mentioned, and even gets to the point that he can defeat Nightmare without even the need for the Vishanti, who I mentioned do empower the Sorcerer Supreme in battle. Other impressive feats similar to this level are stripping the entirety of the Odin Force from a version of King Thor, and we already explained in number 8 how impressive the Odin Force is. He's also defeated the likes of Mephisto, and as I mentioned, does have the power of Vishanti. He does even eventually grow to surpass the entirety of the Vishanti through his own power. He's mastered the Crimson Bands of Cytorak, and his Shield of Seraphim can even protect from attacks from Cytorak himself. He also obviously has the Eye of Agamotto, which is one of the most powerful weapons in general, let alone magic weapons in all of Marvel. And he even, despite being a human, has the fortitude to fuse with eternity itself, which is the embodiment of the entirety of the Marvel Universe. Now, we don't get to see him pull out his entire power set too often, but one of the times he did was against Adam Warlock when he was wielding the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, pulling everything out of his sleeve allowed Doctor Strange to match the Infinity Gauntlet, though only for a moment. He does even admit that he would die in a prolonged fight. But probably his greatest feat, even beyond momentarily matching the Infinity Gauntlet, is when he defeated and forcibly fused with the Chaos Lord Ariok. Now, this was within Ariok's own realm, and he has control over it Mephisto style. And Doctor Strange was able to use this universal power combined with his own to battle and defeat Schumer Gorath. And we may go on a little bit later to explain how impressive that is. Now, in this form, he became so powerful that his mere presence within the 616 universe was destroying multiple galaxies. And as I mentioned, even characters who are already on this list destroy multiple galaxies as a result of fights with other characters. This form of Doctor Strange was so powerful that he did the same just by existing. Now, though this is his greatest feat, obviously there is some context that doesn't exactly apply to Doctor Strange's base power, and that is kind of a theme for the character. And obviously he battles the likes of Dormammu regularly, and their fights were scattering one another across multiple realms, even threatening the entirety of the Dark Dimension. And Doctor Strange has even defeated and been shown as surpassing Dormammu in the past, but we do think he is more often inferior to a character that we believe has better raw power feats.
And then at number 5, we got the Lord of the Dark Dimension himself, Dormammu. Some might think that he would fall under the same category as guys like Mephisto and Nightmare. However, even though he is empowered within the Dark Dimension, he is still a universal threat outside of it. This is to the point that his weaker classic form is superior to Nightmare within his dream realm. Mephisto even attested to Dormammu's ability to destroy every Helllord and Asgardian, which would include Odin, who is number 8 in the list. He is sometimes stated as an equal to Umar, but has much better feats, and has beaten her when she has help from other top-tier sorcerers, like Baron Mordo, who was earlier on the list. He's additionally defeated the likes of Clea, and obviously classic Doctor Strange, who he's shown superiority to far more often than not. Even the Ancient One has no chance against Dormammu. Dormammu has also fought Eternity, the literal embodiment of the Marvel Universe, to the point both were on the edge of destruction. I'm not reiterating the feat that was previously mentioned on Umar's part of the list, where both of them were able to defeat Eternity. This was another instance.
And yeah, unlike the time that they actually defeated Eternity, this was a solo effort by Dormammu, so he was able to harm and fight with the literal embodiment of the universe itself, even by himself.
Eternity was later shown in the fight to be just fine afterwards, while Dormammu was destroyed. But his ability to battle the literal universe itself in his weaker classic form really emphasizes how powerful Dormammu is. I mean, after what was mentioned before with the Umar and Dormammu defeating Eternity, Dormammu was the one who decided to take all the powers of Eternity and start manipulating the universe itself. So that says a lot about Dormammu's control over any type of power, because if he was able to manipulate and not be destroyed in absorbing Eternity's infinite well of power, then there's not really much else that he can't manipulate or absorb. Another universal level feat is when he tanked a majority of the universe's magic being blasted upon him. He's also been able to shatter and absorb barriers between universes, and even embodying the dark dimension, composed of multiple dimensions and universes. And perhaps his greatest feat showcases him fusing the 616 universe with the dark dimension on 2 occasions. He was amped in classic, but did it in base with more modern times. I'd be hesitant to call him a straight-up universe buster without prep, but he clearly possesses manipulation on a universal scale at the very least.
And moving on through our top 5 to number 4 is Schumer Gorath, who we mentioned earlier as being defeated by a highly amped version of classic Doctor Strange. Now, he exists in a dimension above the likes of Mephisto's, and even rules over hundreds of these dimensions. He's also existed before the current 616 universe's timeline, meaning that similar to Galactus, he existed before the universe itself. He's to a Lovecraftian level where he can't truly be perceived by mortals, and even when he is being perceived, still exists across multiple dimensions outside the bounds of the very universe. He's even been stated to exist as the primal source of all chaos that exists in the universe. Now, he doesn't have too many crazy feats, more so just implications and superiority showing over characters that we've already listed like Doctor Strange and Dormammu, but he has also been notably able to fight the entirety of the Elders of the Universe back at the beginning of time, and even singular Elders of the Universe are to a level of power that they can defeat characters like Umar or even Odin, depending on the member of the Elders that we're speaking about. He's also completely dominated the Ancient One and is seen as pretty much unkillable. Even the character who we have ranked as number 1 on this list is somebody that still struggles with Schumer, and really I would say that number 1 and possibly number 2 are the only people on this list even capable of killing Schumer Gorath. But there is a chaotic magic being in the Marvel Universe that we do believe to be above Schumer Gorath, at least in terms of raw power, and that would be our number 3, the Demogorg. Starting off as Atum the God Eater. Now, like Schumer Gorath, this is a being who exists outside and above the realm of space and time itself, and he's an absolute magic brick. He's able to no-sell and neutralize the combined attacks of Hela, who we mentioned in the honorable mentions, Mephisto, whose soul he took even when Mephisto was in his own realm, and even when those 2 characters were backed by 3 other Pantheon gods, they had no chance of hurting the Demogorg whatsoever. He's also able to no-sell arrows hitting with the force of multiple suns, and has several dimension and universe-shaking feats for what little that's worth. He's also battled the Elder God Set, who's a character that scales above the Vishanti themselves and Chthon, and this fight went on for millions of years while Set was only growing stronger throughout the time. And despite this advantage, he was still utterly defeated by Atum, and this was before he even reached his peak as the Demogorg. And once he has reached this peak, he's able to completely and utterly no-sell both Set, who he was fighting evenly with for millions of years previously, when he had help from Chthon, who we mentioned as a universal scale dimensional character. I mean, the literal purpose of this character is for him to consume and destroy every pantheon in existence, and we'd see this trope brought through to characters like Gore the God Butcher and Desak later on, but this is kind of the genesis of this type of character within Marvel. And the Demogorg eventually reached a point in power that he was capable of defeating every single Elder God in existence other than Gaia, who he seemed to spare due to Gaia being his mother. And this is a feat that nobody on the list below the Demogorg could even imagine accomplishing. And this really shows that the top 3 on our list are really on a level of their own entirely. Characters who rival others on the list, like Odin and even Doctor Strange himself, are completely helpless to the Demogorg. And his rampage over the pantheons of existence have been to the point where he has already torn through almost 1,000 pantheons across all of creation. But despite this level of power, he's still only our number 3 on the list. And our number 2 would be a character who the Demogorg would likely target on his crusade to kill every pantheon. And the number 2 spot on our list might be a little bit controversial, but we have Rune King Thor. This is a character who's highly debated in terms of power, Now, some people think he's barely above Skyfather level, and others think that he could blink the entire multiverse out of existence. And like most over and under hyping, we think that it's somewhere in the middle. And I think that the confusion over Rune King Thor's power level is most likely a result of the inconsistent portrayal of the World Tree as a cosmic construct, which we mentioned earlier, and the classification of the 9 realms. Now, some portrayals of the 9 realms imply their existence as planet-sized in what amounts to kind of a star system that just has celestial importance, and others showcase the realms as being their own universes or dimensions in and of themselves. And now the reason that we're bringing all of this up is that one of the best feats that Thor performs under this version is revolving around the World Tree. Now, we don't have time to do a full deep dive into the lore of every realm, but there is definitely some conflicting information, as you can see. However, for this entry, we're going to be operating under the idea that the realms within the World Tree are their own individual universes, though we will admit that this probably doesn't apply to every single one of them. But this line of thinking is backed up by Odin himself and Erik Selvig, so keep in mind that for this entry, we will be operating under the assumption that the World Tree is an energy field that contains universes. Now, we're saying all this to properly portray how impressive it is that Thor was able to rip the World Tree open, which caused the entire construct to implode upon itself. And this feat was accomplished despite the wishes of celestial beings known as those who sit above in shadow, and these are gods above gods who feed on the cycle of Ragnarok. And it's notable that our number 8, Odin, is just basically an insect to these people. Yet Thor was able to completely outsmart them and destroy that which gave them power. It's even been implied by Loki that these guys are Beyonders, which would make this feat for Thor even more insane, but there's not really any strong evidence to back this up concretely. Now, as implied by his name, this character does get his power from the Runes of Wisdom, and this allows him to see past the quantum structure of creation itself, which I would assume means outside of the multiverse. He was also able to destroy casually the dimensional barrier between Muspelheim and Asgard, and this was after persuading Surtur to reforge it for him for what's essentially poetic justice. It's even implied that Thor can do this himself without the need of Surtur. And the runes also grant Rune King Thor spells and hacks that are exclusive to him. Now, obviously, this is a version of Thor that, in our opinion, is way, way far above his father, and his power set almost pushes him to a realm outside that of conventional Marvel magic. But despite this, we still think that there is one magic user in Marvel that's above him.
You're right, Sam, and at number 1, we've got Genesis. This being, having discovered the nature of magic in Marvel's future, and eventually went back in time to the origin of magic, absorbing it as a concept in its entirety already puts him at a high pedestal that we should be looking at. He was able to reverse Loki's attempt to absorb his magic, even though this failed horribly. He was able to beat Mordo and Strange casually, to the point that even being in Genesis's presence makes them useless, even called more powerful than Agamotto. On top of being above Agamotto and Strange, he straight up defeated Schumer Gorath, even stating he could have destroyed him, and we already know how much of a powerhouse Schumer Gorath is. Instead of destroying him, Genesis banishes him to another dimension, which somehow results in creations of humans, which is one origin story that humans have. That puts him above Rune King Thor, in our opinion, is absorbing all of the universe's magic, as previously mentioned, but he became the Big Bang to ironically become the magic which he would eventually absorb, creating this sort of cycle. His mastery over space and time is to the point of allowing him to snuff out every star in the universe just to torture Strange and Mordo. He was such a big threat even as a rookie that the Living Tribunal will intervene despite the Avengers already battling him. And now just looking at Genesis feat-wise, he has one that I've already mentioned that puts him above Rune King Thor. But conceptually speaking and contextually speaking, Genesis just has much more on Rune King Thor than Rune King Thor has on Genesis.
Yeah, and I could definitely see somebody argue that Rune King Thor destroying the World Tree is a better raw power feat than Genesis becoming the Big Bang. But as you said, the very concept of Genesis' character means that he embodies the entirety of Marvel's magic. And that obviously would include the Runes of Wisdom themselves, as this was the primal source of magic throughout all of Marvel, so it was before Odin or even Bor had planted the World Tree. So obviously we believe that embodying the entirety of the universe's magic would make this most powerful magic user in Marvel by default Genesis. So yeah, that's our list of the top 10 most powerful magic users in Marvel. Eventually we'll want to move on to a DC list, but Obviously, this one took a lot of research, so arguably that one might take even more research, but we'll definitely get that video out sometime soon. But until then, obviously leave a like on this video, comment any magic users in Marvel that you think we forgot.
Yeah, follow us on all platforms. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You can find us at Battle Boys, which is our tag. And it was great coming back again for another video.
Yeah, it was awesome covering this topic, and we look forward to covering other topics similar to it later on in the future. And like Kev said, give us a follow. Specifically on TikTok, we're kind of on the road to 1,000 followers right now. So definitely drop by, give us a like, subscribe. Everything will be linked in the description. But until then, thanks for talking about this topic with me, Kev, and everybody, thanks for watching.
Thanks for having me, and I'll talk to you guys another time.
Bye, guys. See ya.